This is a big, big week for tech journalists, and I'm going to tell you today a little bit about the trove of documents that are about to come our way, in addition to the testimony we're about to get, that really is going to create what I think could be one of the breakthrough moments in the history of understanding how much harm we are doing to one another when we try to shape each other's behavior for profit. I'm Jake Ward, this is the Rip Current. We look at the big invisible forces shaping us, and social media has, of course, been one of those forces for quite a while. Now, there is debate still in academic circles as to whether or not we can truly lay the current mental health crises and general well-being difficulties of young people at the feet of social media companies. It's very hard to study that because there's very few places that you can actually use as a control group. It's really hard to find anybody on this planet that doesn't use social media as a teenager. And so how do you do that control study? Really hard. New Zealand, because they have now, Australia, my bad. Australia, because they have now banned social media for young people, will actually be that control group in the future. So I'm interested to hear about that. But social media companies have for a long time used the excuse that we are just a reflection of the world. What the world, how people behave in the world is how they behave online, and so we can't be held responsible for every bad behavior that they do, but we are always trying to improve. This is something they say. But what we are seeing from social media companies in a new trove of documents that is being made public now because of big court cases that begin this year, in which parents and others, state attorneys general, school districts, others, are suing the big social media companies. The documents that we're going to see in this testimony are very explosive and very helpful in understanding just how much business value these companies see in kids and how clearly they understood the harms that could befall a kid on a social media platform even before we did. Now, I am asked over and over again in social media appearances and in podcasts and public speaking appearances, hey, what can we do about the influence of big tech? And, people are often looking for an individualized answer, like, can I be a better parent? Can I do push-ups? Can I show stoic self-discipline? But what so many folks, I think, don't understand is the scale at which this harm has taken place and the scale at which these companies operate, which means that our tactics for pushing back against that have got to be at scale as well. And so I'm always saying to people, like, the best paid, smartest, most creative, most motivated people who are behavioral experts work at these companies. And so the idea that you are supposed to kind of push back against that by, limiting screen time is crazy. And instead, we're going to need regulations. And the only way we're going to get to regulations is if we just sue and sue and sue. That's been my line for a long time. Well, 2026 is going to put paid to that idea because we are seeing a series of these lawsuits and we're seeing these documents come to light. So I'm excited about this, not because I want to punish these companies. I guess you could say I don't just want to punish these companies. But what I really want in the United States is for there to be an expansion of what we think of as harm. In the U.S., we are very good at prosecuting and suing when it comes to things like financial loss and physical harm. Financial and physical harm, death and theft, we do pretty well. But behavioral harm is something we've been really allergic to as a society. We like to believe that people who are addicted to a thing are making bad choices and it's their fault. We blame the addict a lot of the time in the United States, without considering the incredible power of the addictive substance or the incredible machine, whether it's tobacco or social media companies, the incredible machine that pushes that product on people. And that machine, I think for everyone to kind of understand the basics of behavioral harm and just how easy we are to manipulate, we have to look inside the companies that do it in order to really understand the machinations that make it possible, and as a result can understand the harms that are being done. And man, these documents are already there. So two big themes emerge in the documents that we see so far. And I would highly recommend looking at Tech Oversight Project. They have a really handy report out that details a lot of this stuff. I interviewed the executive director, Sasha Hayworth, on a recent episode of the Rip Current. You might want to check that out. So One of the big themes is the business value of kids to these companies. And it's exemplified in this presentation from November of 2020 at Google and YouTube. A lot of this stuff is redacted. There's really interesting sort of whole pages that are cut out. But here is the kind of tone you get in a lot of this stuff. Solving kids, and imagine having to write that in your professional life, is a massive opportunity, right? So the opportunity to get kids into the pipeline of users is what so many of these documents are articulating and are based around. That's the incentive structure to understand as you understand these documents. So in this case, right, it's talking about how kids under the age of 13 are the fastest growing internet audience in the world. 170,000 kids around the world go online for the first time every day, right? That is a ripe market for this company. And our own data shows, it says, family and kid users have higher engagement and are more likely to be buyers. Families lead to better retention and more overall value. So that's Google and YouTube. Here's another one. Here is an email between two executives at Facebook back in 2016, end of 2016, in which it is articulated that Mark Zuckerberg, has decided that the top priority for the company in H1 2017 is teens, right? That's a really big one. And they, you know, this is so here's another big one that it has to do with wanting time for kids to be the here it is. Our overall company goal is total teen time spent. Right? I mean, these are the sorts of things that are being said here. So that's one broad category here. The other broad category is the knowledge that is exhibited in these documents of the harms that can befall a kid using this stuff, even as it is intended to be used. So here's an internal newsletter from Instagram that has an interview study with an N of 24. So they interviewed 24 kids, right? But they have a study here around Instagram conflicts, right? The fighting that goes on in the real world and on Instagram, and the ways in which those two things can make each other worse, right? So in this case, they talk. This is the TLDR that they put out for everybody internally. Most Instagram conflicts are between real-world connections. Current classifiers and policies do not address many of these conflicts. This is from October 2018. Most Instagram conflicts use comments. Commenting on each other's stories on each other's posts is what was setting stuff off. And here's the big one. Teens weaponize Instagram features to torment each other, often without violating standards. Instagram conflicts are common and painful. Most participants regret engaging in conflicts. So what we're getting here, right, is the clear knowledge that bad things are going on in this particular case. That there are real harms befalling people. TikTok has a whole long list of the ways in which YouTube is a whole thing about how habitual use and late night use is, sort of contributes to the majority of conflicts. There's stuff from TikTok about the sort of dangers of this stuff in the whole, basically that sorry, I'm just riffing here because I got to look it up here. A TikTok strategy document points out that TikTok, quote, is particularly popular with younger users who are particularly sensitive to reinforcement in the form of social reward and have minimal ability to self-regulate effectively. And then there's an undated YouTube slide deck that points out that negative well-being effects can result from user behaviors and lists late night use, heavy habitual use, unintentional use, and problematic content as the root of the majority of negative effects on well-being. So this clear knowledge that this stuff can do damage is such an important thing to understand here in the context of the clear pressure everyone is under to bring as many kids into this pipeline as they possibly can, right? I mean, that is really what we're learning here. Now, the companies are beginning to respond. Here is a site that Meta put up once these documents came out last week, our commitment to supporting teens and parents. And they describe, they have lots of things about, we know you are worried about the safety of your teens online. We are consistently making changes to provide teens with safe and protected experiences and to bring parents more peace of mind. They have a little sort of cheat sheet on their position on the lawsuits. They say, quote, "These lawsuits misportray our company and the work we do every day to provide young people with safe, valuable experiences online. And despite the snippets of conversations or cherry-picked quotes that plaintiffs' counsel may use to paint an intentionally misleading picture of the company, we are proud of the progress we've made. We stand by our record of putting teen safety first, and we'll keep making improvements." Now, I'm getting asked, I was on Katie Tour, her show on MS Now today, talking about this stuff, and I care about this stuff not because of the short-term punishment that might be levied against these companies. It will be interesting to see, right? Well, they'd be found to be in violation of the Child Online Protection Act, which is the only federal legislation that protects us in any form about data privacy or anything else in this country. Kids are the only thing we've cared about at all at the federal level. Or will they be found to be in violation of state law? Will they lose in court on some other grounds, right? Like what kinds of fines or new regulations might come into place, because of this as it pertains to kids specifically. But what I care about is the long-term effect. And one of the long-term effects that I'm thinking a lot about here is that, traditionally in this country, we've only really ever cared about financial harm and physical harm. Theft and death, right, is what the law is mostly for in this country. When it comes to behavior, we tend to blame people for their own choices, right? And we tend to blame the addict. But we have seen times in our history when we have recognized, there is a technology at work here that is way more powerful than we recognized, and it is in fact causing people to make choices that they would not want to make otherwise, that they would avoid otherwise if they could. And that realization, right? I mean, so it's no coincidence. So nicotine was one of them, right? Nicotine putting people way beyond their ability to make good choices, and that's why we had to limit the exposure of kids to nicotine. That's why we had to limit them to the marketing around it, right? All of that stuff. And it's no coincidence that a lot of the legal precedent that's being referred to in these lawsuits against the social media companies are referring to the big tobacco lawsuits, because it's a very similar legal theory. So what I care about in this is that people going forward from here may get to a smarter place. I consider it a very sort of childish attitude to say that people are entirely responsible for their own choices, and you just got to be a better parent, or you got to put on screen time limits, or do more push-ups, or whatever it is that people think you're supposed to do. Read the Stoics. That stuff is not enough. That's what we're learning, I think, in this country. And so the idea that we could be maybe entering an era, a historical era, where we really start to use the science and say, these companies are far more sophisticated, and we are far more gullible and shapeable than anybody realized. And the fact that we're going to maybe establish that in court by looking at these documents and sorting out just how sophisticated this machine has been that has been aimed at us and at our kids all this time, well, I like to think that that could be the beginning of a new era of assessing not just financial harm, not just physical harm, but behavioral harm as a thing to regulate against in the future.
The Rip Current is produced and created by me, Jacob Ward. And if you liked this show and you want more content like this, go to theripcurrent.com, where I publish a weekly newsletter that covers these same sorts of stories of the big invisible forces that have us all in their grip. And if you want to really do me a favor, if you could go to where you have listened to this or watched it and like it, share it, or even better, review it. Holy cow, is that helpful? It's the best possible way for me to find a new audience. I really appreciate you being here. Thanks for listening.